Mm. Hello there. Yeah, we're starting a little earlier. I'm starting this a little early. A couple minutes, just give us some time to fix any audio issues. I took some of your suggestions and I put a compressor and a limiter on my audio. So hopefully it works. Yell at me if it doesn't, because I don't know. I can't hear what's coming through my microphone. So if it sounds terrible, if I forget to keep my microphone close to my face, just put it in the comments and be like, hey, stupid. What are you doing? How's it going, Ed? Hardstee, extra good citizen. Welcome back to the party. So today, before we go into anything crazy, hold on. Gotta get my drink on. Oh, good, excellent. Sounds good, he says. Today, I was supposed to debate someone on the legality of filming a restricted military installation. How's it going, Humberto? Max, oh man, all the old crew is back. So it was supposed to be a live debate between myself and someone who's been commenting on my videos, where we discussed the legality of filming a restricted military installation from public property. They have backed out. Maybe they have a good excuse. I don't know. They have not given a good excuse, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. They are still commenting on my video at the moment, so one would assume that they're relatively free, but I don't know. I'm not gonna call them out for things that I can't confirm are acts of cowardice. And I'm by no means saying that they're a coward for not doing it. Absolutely, that is not what I'm saying. But I was looking forward to it, and apparently now it's not happening. So, instead, because I told you guys that it was going to be happening, we're going to be talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is sovereign citizens, which is actually one of the reasons I started this channel. Is when I was a police officer, a few years ago, I learned about sovereign citizens. And I discussed this briefly in my last live stream. As I found out about them, I went, wow, that's super interesting. That there is this group of people who believe certain things about the government. They have these little conspiracy theories. They think that they have the right to drive without a license. They think they have the right to not pay taxes. And so I looked into it, and I got like really deep down the rabbit hole. Oh my God. So deep down the rabbit hole. It's insane. I started writing essays. I started making videos. I basically started giving these little unofficial classes to my fellow police officers who wanted to know more about this. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a subject matter expert, but I know more about them than most people, if not everyone I've talked to. I mean, there are people out there who certainly know more about it than I do. But I like to think I have a pretty good grasp on what sovereign citizens are. When I was researching them, I discovered First Amendment auditors, which is basically what I started the channel around officially. That was the official start of my channel, was when I discovered First Amendment auditors. I saw that some of them were filming restricted military installations, coming full circle in this discussion. And I thought, you can't do that. I am in a fairly unique position to explain to people why that is prohibited by law. Not unique, but having been military police and actually having enforced the prohibitions on filming a restricted military installation, I thought, well, I can make a video about this. Because at the time, I was in the comments section being like, no, you're wrong, here's why it's illegal. And I kind of got sick of writing the same thing over and over again, so I just made a video so I could be like, you're wrong, here's why, watch this video. And then I enjoyed that, and I got a lot of really good feedback on the video, and I kept going. And so here we are, me doing a live stream for you guys, and just having a good time. So, yeah. So sovereign citizens. What are sovereign citizens? For those of you who don't know, because I know, Hardstee, you were saying that you're not super familiar with them. It's basically, it's a movement. Last I saw from the FBI, they said there were about 300,000 of them within the United States, but that's an old number. It could be more, it could be less. I mean, that number is fairly outdated, but that's the most recent number I've seen. It's a movement of people that basically don't want to be subjected to certain laws within the government. They think that the Constitution gives them the ability to not pay taxes, or to drive without a license, or to do a whole bunch of other things. And I have a video on my channel, if you really want to go in depth about this, about the history of sovereign citizens and sort of how it started. And I have a few videos on some of their arguments that they make, some of the really common arguments that they make, and why those arguments are basically nonsense. And I'm going to be continuing to put out information. I'm actually editing a few videos that all have to be released at the same time. It's 3 or 4 videos that have to be released at the same time, which is really frustrating, because I like to put out videos at a regular interval to sort of, because people want to watch the videos, but they all sort of reference each other. I don't want to release a video that's referencing something that I don't already have information about, so that's a whole thing. I'm going on a tangent. So if you want to learn more, I do have videos on my channel. Yes, and you're right, Gary. The Constitution does only go so far. But we're going to be discussing some stuff, not super in depth, because it gets real in depth. We'll see. Maybe we'll go in depth. I don't want to limit myself just yet to how far I'm going to take this. But it started in the 40s, 50s-ish. Not the sovereign movement itself, but the precursors to it. There's a guy who started a church called the Church of Jesus Christ Christian. It was an offshoot of, a Christian-style church, but it was basically designed around the idea that white people are the children of God, and that everyone else kind of isn't. So it was very much a white supremacist church. And doing that, he got he had a bunch of followers. He had some people that helped him run the church. William P. Gale is one of the guys that was giving sermons there, and he was broadcasting this across the country at the time, saying, like, look, the government doesn't control you. You control the government. You don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to do all this stuff. And from there, in the early 70s, I want to say, the actual sovereign citizen movement started, where people were like, yeah, let's come up with a bunch of conspiracy theories that explain why the government doesn't have the authority that they think they do. So on and so but I'm a sovereign citizen as a cop. No. That's a whole different thing. So the idea that being above the laws makes you a sovereign citizen is not the case, and police are not above the laws by any means. There are certain exceptions to laws that are written into the laws, which means that if you are using those exceptions to the laws lawfully, the law actually does apply to you. That's a whole different conversation. I actually have a video that I'm planning on doing that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with James Freeman. He is an auditor and a very borderline sovereign citizen himself. But he has a video where he's at a police station talking about, oh, this is why police are sovereign citizens, and all of his information is wrong. So, yeah. No, the ones who are like, I'm not a sovereign citizen, like, that's an oxymoron. It's like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. I'm not the one making up your name. Some will call themselves constitutionalists. That's a pretty common one. Some will call themselves freemen. You have Moorish Americans, but that tends to be based off of the idea that African Americans are the true, children of God, sort of. It's a whole thing. Now, Moorish Americans, don't get me wrong, there are 2 types of Moorish Americans. So the Moorish Science Temple of America, which is completely unrelated. So not every Moorish American is part of this sort of sovereign citizen movement. But that's a whole thing. And that goes really deep down a rabbit hole explaining all of this. So how's it going, Fire and Hoses? So I just want to give you a brief overview. It's basically a bunch of conspiracy theories saying, like, oh, the United States is a corporation, not a government, and therefore, we are all collateral as debt. Which is why your birth certificate is actually basically like a stock. And if you turn it into the government, they'll have to give you the value of that stock, which is anywhere from $100 million to $100 billion. Oh, Rocker T, you did make it. I thought you weren't going to show up. By the way, folks, Rocker T is the guy who this was going to be a I was going to debate him about military installation. I was going to put him in a Discord chat so we could talk. But I guess he showed up, but I don't know if he still wants to debate. I mean, I can end this. I can end this live stream right now and start a new one. I don't know. I feel like we're already kind of into it. You know, we're already starting about the sovereign citizens. We might as well keep going. You know, why not? And I have this very lovely video I want to show you guys. It's a channel called Partially Woke. And let me, boop, there it is right there. And the thing I like about Partially Woke isn't the content. I think the content is absolute garbage. It's that his videos only about, it's pretty short. A lot of these sovereign citizen videos are very long because you have to throw just a ton of information to try to, you know, these conspiracy theories take a ton of information that's completely unrelated to each other, mash it together until it sounds kind of good, but then when you start picking it apart, does not make sense. So his are really short because he assumes that you already know all that lengthy information. And the fun thing about this guy is he's doing all of this to basically sell a book he wrote and to sell fake license plates and to do a whole bunch of you know, financial gain off of basically, I don't know if he believes what he's talking about. I don't. I have no idea if he believes any of the nonsense he says. But he certainly is interested in profiting off the people who do believe it. So, yeah, well, Rocker, you're here, but you said that you weren't going to be able to make it to debate, so I don't have it set up to actually have like a real conversation with you. Because I'm not going to put you at the disadvantage of you typing while I talk. That would be ridiculous. That would be incredibly unfair to you. So, I don't know what to tell you. You're a little late. I messaged you this morning. I gave you the opportunity to say, yep, let's do this. And you said, yeah, it's not going to happen. Yes, I mean, we could have done Discord. That was the plan. But Fire and Roses, I did see that that ambulance service was... Oh, man. Like, oh. I mean, at that point, do you get in trouble for impersonating an emergency vehicle? Because people are... Is he a licensed ambulance anything? Don't know. Well, see, Rocker T, I'm already sort of involved in a different live stream. So, unless the entire chat wants me to quit what I'm talking about and set up a Discord and debate you, I'm fine with that. I'm ready to go. But, yeah, where's Merv? You'd think he'd show up to these and start harassing me. I don't know. He sort of... He doesn't get involved in my content all that much after my responses. Can you really in Ohio? In Ohio, you can open your own private ambulance transport company. I did not know that people could do that. Okay, Roger T, I've done nothing but disprove your information for probably a solid month. But, look, it's not fair to just say that without evidence. If you are free Thursday, I can debate you Thursday. How do you feel about that? Different time, got it. How's it going, Teresa? Yeah, well, according to you, I've attempted and tried and failed. But that's why we're going to have a public debate, so that the community can make a decision. So if you're free Thursday, all right, Thursday probably around 4. That sounds good. If anything changes with that time, I will send you a message, and I am certainly looking forward to that. So, but moving on from that, no emergency. So if you can't transport them for an emergency, why would you have the lights on, right? Can you operate those lights on a public road? Teresa, what do you want to debate about? I mean, I'm more than happy to have live debates all day. if we set them up. Oh, yeah, no, at the wrestling match, I mean, I don't see an issue with the wrestling match. But if they actually start driving on the roadway, because apparently they did, and the guy was pulled over because he didn't have a license, because it was revoked because he didn't pay his child support. I mean, so we can assume that he was driving on a public road. I don't know if he was driving as an emergency vehicle on a public road with the lights on or sirens or whatever, but these guys have issues. Anyway, let's go into this video, and I'll be pausing a bunch to try to give you guys an idea of what he's talking about. I left this. Oh my god, I wrote basically an essay responding to this video on this guy's channel. He appears to have deleted it. I think it was on this one, because of course he did. Because he's trying to make money. He's trying to earn money off of this. And if I've written an entire, essay being like, this is everything you've gotten wrong, he doesn't want that. Am I drunk? No, I am. I wish I was. I've got an energy drink. If I sound drunk, it's because I'm just really, really tired. My work schedule has had me working all sorts of crazy shifts. Because, folks, this isn't my real job. This is just something I do for fun. So, if I sound like I'm drunk, sometimes you'll hear that it's just because my sleep schedule is this month is just brutal. Oh man, do I know what's in these energy drinks? I keep getting distracted. I don't want to tell you guys a story. So this is a Bang energy drink, not sponsored. But it says, what is it? Not intended for individuals under the age of 18. It says it right there. You can't really see it all that well. But I was on duty, in uniform, police vest, duty belt, everything. And I went into a gas station to buy one of those things on military installation. And I got carded. And I was like, what are you doing? Why do I need to provide an ID card? And like, well, I can't sell this to you unless I know that you're 18 or older and have evidence. And I was like, thinking to myself, I'm on a military installation in a military uniform, which means I have to be 18. Also, I am the police on duty, which, what? And I did it because I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was just the most absurd thing, so I went along with it just for the memes. But there's no legal obligation for me to have to provide ID. Like, this isn't a controlled substance like alcohol would be. Anyway. So, yeah, at a certain point, it is compliment to be carded. Every time I don't get carded now, I'm kind of a little disappointed. Like, it's convenient, but I'm just like, I'm getting old. Anyway, that's enough distraction. So, let's look at what this guy is trying to sell us.
Trent Goodbody, partially woke.
Yeah.
In this video, please allow me to reveal something to you that I find rather...
Is the audio looping? Well, good for Merb. He can join in on us. I guess. I don't really have a problem with that, but we're going to discuss sovereign citizens.
Stay with me here for a little bit. I promise it'll be worth it. And I'm going to give away this book to one lucky person.
Oh my god, it's a book that he has a part of writing, I'm fairly certain. Yeah, I should have done the Discord, Rocker, and I would have if you had decided that you wanted to debate today, but you decided not to.
So watch to the end of the video to find out what the question is, and then leave a comment and be first, and I'll send you this book, plus a few extra free goodies coming up in this video today.
I am jealous of his beard, though. I'll give him that. Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of a guy named Noah Webster?
Mm-mm.
Well, there's a lot of confusion between Noah and Daniel Webster, but there was no relationship between them. Daniel Webster is best known as a lawyer, a member of Congress, a Secretary of State, and perhaps the greatest orator of the first half of the 19th century.
First of all, what? But I digress.
some people's opinion. Noah Webster's fame is quite different. It rests on his pen. Do you know why Noah Webster spent more than 25 years writing and publishing his dictionary? Well, Noah realized that England and the New America had different forms of government, institutions, customs, and laws. Because of this, he believed that they needed different vocabulary. He also knew that science and technology were developing rapidly, and new words were being introduced just as quickly. So he...
All right, I don't. Yeah, he's that Santa Claus. So I think he's getting into the Webster Dictionary. I assume he's bringing up, because I haven't watched these in a while, I assume he's bringing up Black's Law Dictionary. So Black's Law Dictionary from the Sovereign Citizen Movement is like their Bible, right? So Black's Law Dictionary is a dictionary. It's a really nice legal dictionary. It's not a source of law, but it's a very nice dictionary. And one of the nice things about it is that if you're like, what is the legal definition of this term? What is the legal definition of a car? It will tell you. And then the older versions, I think they took it out of the newer versions, but the older versions had the case law that actually established what a car was for court cases. So it's really neat. But most of them use the second edition, which was published in 1910, which kind of a long time ago, 110 years ago. The most recent edition, which is the 12th edition, was published in 2019. So they're using a dictionary that is significantly out of date. They're misinterpreting the statute, or it's not the statute, the definitions within it because of differences in wording, the vernacular being different, vernacular being, how people talked and wrote things and said things. But it's weird. And I'm fairly certain the reason they use the second edition is because it's available for free online. So, not a great reason. There are definitions within the second edition that have been misinterpreted, and they think that it gives them the right to drive without a license, so on and so forth. So, I assume he's establishing that. Well, Rocker T, we've already had this debate with Merb. And he didn't do so hot. Most of his information was proven wrong by yours truly. So not much of an excuse. Moving on.
He spent over 25 years researching words and their origins and writing the first American dictionary. This dictionary helped Americans to feel pride in their new country and enabled everyone across the new nation to have a standard vocabulary. Webster's greatest achievement was the dictionary. In 1800, he published his intentions of writing a dictionary. He published a short and concise but comprehensive version in 1806. The final version was finished in 1825 and published in 1828. It contained 70,000 words. It is no exaggeration to say that it was immediately accepted as the greatest dictionary.
I don't know what he's talking about. We're opening the trans. We're skipping ahead because I don't want to just. Where are we? 202. Fancy here. Writing dictionary, 70,000 words. Government from change of the meaning. All right.
He wrote it in an attempt to prevent the government from changing the meanings of the words in the Constitution.
I'd like to see a citation on that.
In fact, if you look at the very front of the 1828 Noah Webster's Dictionary on page 11, you'll find an eloquent and delightful to read passage from Noah himself explaining why he wrote his dictionary, which I will quote now. Take note of how many times America is used and how many times the United States is not used. This country must, in some future time, as she is already by the liberation.
Do you guys think we should fact check that? Any of this? Civil ecclesiastical constitutions, Europe has grown old in folly, corruption. Do we want to do that? Let's see if we can find the 1828 version of Webster's. 1828 Webster's Dictionary. Ah. Well, online edition. I don't know if it'll give us the pages. Preface. Can I search within it? Oh boy, can I. Okay, Rocker Team, whatever you say, bud. I don't know. I'd have to find a PDF.
Reality of her civil and ecclesiastical constitutions. Europe is grown old in folly, corruption, and tyranny. And that country.
I like that argument, Fire Moses. If a sovereign citizen is recording a traffic stop to post it on YouTube, isn't that using your vehicle for commercial purposes? Well, first of all, this whole idea of using your vehicle for commercial purposes doesn't. It is a flawed thing based on a misinterpretation of the definition found in Black's Law Dictionary. And technically, yeah, it would be for commercial use, sort of, but it's also protected by the First Amendment under the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances and the freedom of press, since what the recording is has a message to convey, and B, there's an audience to deliver it. And that comes from a ruling in Hurley versus Irish American Gay and Lesbian Bisexual Group of Boston Incorporated, I want to say, but that's off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Rucker T. I was a cop. Sorry. Distractions.
Laws are perverted.
I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe I'm thinking this was a different video.
Human nature debased. For America in her infancy to adopt the present maxims.
Yeah, we're not going to keep watching this nonsense. We're going to this one. This one is.
It's drinking buddy here.
All right, let's see if it still has the comment I left on this one. I would have been more prepared, but Rocker T backed out. So, yeah, he has removed my comment.
Here, that which is free cannot also be that.
Rocker T. Military police. Police is in the name. I was sworn law enforcement. I enforced state, federal, and military law. I don't know what to tell you, man. Just because you don't think it's law enforcement does not. I mean, should we contact the people I put in prison and tell them, sorry, bud, he's a fake police officer, doesn't count? Whoops.
That which is governed. One is free or one is not free. Join me today as I go over what to do at a traffic stop where you're exercising your right.
All right, this one's much better. I'm sorry. The other one was like, what on earth was I talking about? The other one was him talking about dictionaries. This is what I was looking for.
By permission from an authority figure. Today on.
We're gonna keep pausing to address Rocker T because he was supposed to debate me, and so I'm enjoying this. So, Rocker, we're gonna bring this down. It's nice and smooth. Here's the thing. I was able to enforce law in both military and civilians. So, technically, I was considered federal law enforcement because I enforced law on federal property. I had federal jurisdiction within the military base property. Sorry, got distracted by my door there. So, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. How pretentious. I love this microphone just because, I mean, look how absurd this is. It's just stupidly absurd, and I love it. Anyway, we're going to go back to this dude.
Partially woke.
There's this little explosion.
The first and biggest step is to get your mind.
Oh, we're pausing it again. All right. Rocker T, I was trained to enforce both civilian and military law. Civilian being state and federal.
Right.
Look, I wouldn't engage him, but I'm enjoying it too much.
You know how to counter every attack. Spend ample time learning and practicing before manifesting any of this outwardly. You need to have confidence. And
you must be confident.
Then
just like I am, he says.
Confidence will guide what you manifest externally. My goal is to be honorable. I want to give them proper notice, and I want to make a record of everything, just like I am gathering evidence for a lawsuit. Remember, to stay in common law, your entity must be from common law. A man or woman cannot act in commerce. They run entities, but never...
Rocker, again, 38.02, covers two different things. One, it covers identifying yourself to a police officer after you've been arrested, and it covers providing false identification to a police officer if you've been detained or the witness to a crime, as well as other things. So, for those of you who don't know, in one of our debates, Rocker tried to bring up Texas Penal Code 38.02, which was not relevant to any part of our conversation. He said you can't be arrested for it, which is not true. Moving on. But that's going to come up in the debate on Thursday, hopefully.
Are an entity. And don't even try this with any type of state plate on your car. They have been trained to believe that a car with a public brand or a state plate, which are the same thing, is also public property, meaning it is their property. You cannot be double-minded. It is all or nothing. You can't walk on the fence. You have to be on one side or the other.
So, no, Rocker, you misinterpreted that. I said that 38.02 you can be arrested for it. You assumed I meant the part that was about failure to ID. You had to be arrested before you're required to identify yourself, unless you have been pulled over for a traffic offense. Anyway, Teresa, before you give ID, you have to ask to see their oath. I mean, you can ask. They don't have to show anything. I mean, other than being like, yes, I am a police officer. If you doubt it, you can call 911. In some places, they do have to give a business card, if reasonable. In some places, they do have to give their badge number. That is not a requirement everywhere. But generally, yes, they would have to provide a badge number and name. But as far as asking to see their oath, that's not something that they provide if you ask for it.
You cannot give them evidence that
I got you, Teresa. All right.
Contracted with the state. Do not get emotional, except for filling yourself with love. Use the golden rule. Don't think of other.
Can we stop and address the fact that you said don't get emotional except for filling yourself with love? Was that weird to anyone else? Does anyone else think that's weird? We're going to move on.
Others as your enemy or competition. Think of others as your alternate self. Do you love yourself? Then treat both yourself and your alternate selves like it. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. We are all one. This is the only way that we will be able to conclude peace. First off, always find a safe place to pull over, not on the side of the highway. A church parking lot is best. Always
No, they can absolutely don't pull over on the side of a highway. No, if you're on a highway and there's a place to, pull off, there's a breakdown lane, you pull off on the side of the highway. Sorry, that's Nathaniel. Distracted by my comments. Certain military police forces have concurrent jurisdiction with local police. Military police, the actual military members. So myself, I would not have concurrent jurisdiction if I was CID. That's a federal agent within the military. It depends. But then you have DOD police, which can have concurrent jurisdiction because they technically are civilians. They're employed to enforce law on the base. So generally, if you see military police and they're in actual, a uniform, like camo and all that, and it says military police, they're probably not going to have concurrent jurisdiction off of base property. However, if they're in a blue uniform and it says something like DOD police, then there's a very good chance. Also keep in mind that base property does not end necessarily at the fence line. That's just the restricted part of the base. Base property can extend past that. So a person in uniform can potentially enforce law outside of that fence line if it's still DOD property. So it does get a little weird, or it can. If on a highway you can maintain your speed and exit until you reach an area where there are people. Not necessarily. I mean, you could articulate that in court, but good luck.
Greet the officer in a friendly manner and ask them for their name and badge number. You may remind them that officer is a title and not their name if you want, and then continue using the following. You can boil it all down to one question at your next encounter if you like. The question is, do you have probable cause to believe that I have committed a crime?
All right, we're going to talk about this. The probable cause to believe that they are committing a crime. So there's this idea that traffic infractions are not crimes, which is sort of true because in some states, in many states, most traffic infractions or moving violations are considered civil infractions because they don't require jail time. So it's not necessarily a criminal offense, but is a civil offense. Now, some states, there are moving violations that are considered criminal activities that can get you arrested. So this idea that if you're pulled over for a civil infraction is unlawful is false. Because the Supreme Court has ruled that even a civil infraction is something that you can be lawfully pulled over for under the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to be protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. It's basically determined that if you're if you're committing a moving violation, it is reasonable to detain you. So he is arguing like, no, traffic offenses aren't criminal, therefore they can't stop you for it. That is false.
Involving a victim, because if you do, I would like you to articulate that to me.
There's also this argument that crimes require a victim, and that comes from what does that come from? Corpus delicti, which is the body of a crime. It's basically corpus delicti is evidence that a crime has been committed. Now, there's a definition, the body of a crime, right? A common definition includes the idea of like an actual physical person who has been injured. However, that is not required. It's just for someone to be convicted of a crime, there has to be actual evidence that it has occurred. It doesn't mean that there has to be a physically injured person. So let's say you are speeding. Well, who's injured by your speeding if you're just pulled over for speeding, not for actually hitting someone? Well, the government is the injured party at that point, because the government has established rules. They've put together that public roadway. You are violating the rules that allow you to drive on that public roadway, and therefore they are the victim. That's a thing that they argue, and it's just, no, you don't require a physically injured person for many crimes. There are certain crimes where you do. For example, battery would require someone to have actually been injured based on the actual elements of that crime. However, many crimes do not require an actual physical injury. So what he's saying is not correct.
Otherwise, this is an unlawful detention, and I should have no obligation to provide you with anything, and I should be free to go on my way, right?
Yeah, so the idea, like, there's no injured party, and traffic infractions are a crime, therefore I don't have to provide ID. No, once again, the Supreme Court, and if you guys ask me later, I can find that ruling for you. The Supreme Court and state courts have basically said, nah, if you've been pulled over, as long as the state requires you to provide identification, that is not unlawful. Right? Now, every state requires you, to my knowledge, every state requires you to provide identification if you are the driver of a vehicle that has been pulled over for committing a traffic violation or a moving violation, anything like that. It is not unreasonable for an officer to require you to identify if state law requires you to do so. So, even if there's no injured person, even if it's only a civil infraction, you still had to provide that ID.
There are a few more appropriate questions you can ask. For example, if they ask for any documentation from you, ask them if they plan on using any of it.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mayor, but I did not expect it to be this agreeable with the information I was putting out, based on our past history.
Against you in court. And if they want to give you a citation, you can ask, are you authorized to negotiate a financial instrument? When they ask, what is your name, it would be fair to ask, are you asking me legally or lawfully?
That legally it is allowed by law. Lawfully means it's not prohibited by law. It doesn't make sense to be like, are you asking me legally or lawfully? It doesn't. I don't really know what he's saying. He's saying something else.
You can ask, are you authorized to negotiate a financial instrument?
Are you authorized to operate a financial instrument? Makes, as far as I know, absolutely no sense. If someone asked me that and I had pulled them over, I would just be like, yes? Nothing about that question makes sense in my mind. I have no idea what that is.
What is your name? It would be fair to ask, are you asking me legally or lawfully? You know, his answer would probably be legally, and your response could be, please show me where I'm legally required to have a name, or better yet, where is the law that...
Am I legally required to have a name? Well, to legally drive on a public roadway, you are required to have a driver's license. Now, to have a driver's license, you must have a name. Therefore, that right there is your legal requirement to have a name while driving a motor vehicle. So, I guess legally you aren't required to have a name in general, but if you're going to be driving, you do. So that's a kind of absurd argument, because right there you're admitting that you don't have a driver's license, more or less.
States I am lawfully required to have a name, they will likely respond with, I don't understand. And that
Because it doesn't make sense. They wouldn't understand because it doesn't make sense. Now, if they want the statute on, the requirements for a driver's license, absolutely, you can ask for that. Now, an officer is not required to give that statute. By the way, all they have to be able to say is you violated the law, and that will come up in court. In court, you can be like, "What's the statute?" and they will formally advise you of what that statute is. But on the side of the road, police doesn't have to be aware of the exact statute number, just that what you're doing is a violation of the law. So these things that he's like, you can ask for this and they had to provide it to you, is wrong. Moving on.
in that case, all I'd want to know is which one of those corporate officers has a claim against me.
Again, like I was saying earlier when we first started this live stream, corporate officer is not that. There's this idea that the United States, the government, is a corporation, and it is not a corporation in the sense that they think it is. Hendrick versus Maryland, or Hendrick v. Maryland is a good thing, and Gary. Yes, these are things you take up with a judge and not an officer. That's why I tell people is fight it in court, not on the side of the road, right? Document everything that you think they're doing wrong and take it to a judge. The judge will be able to give you a hard yes or no. Someone else was saying something, asking if I was a lawyer. No, I was a police officer. So, as I'm explaining these things to you, this is from the point of view of if I had pulled you over, would it make sense to me based on my knowledge and training? The legal arguments are a little more complicated, but it's the whole thing. Yes, no, record the police, Rocker. Absolutely record the police. I have never had a problem with recording the police if you've been pulled over, and I'm not familiar with anything that would prohibit you from filming a police officer if you have been pulled over by one, unless it obstructs the officer in their duty. But no, absolutely, always film the police when you're interacting with them if you want.
If they have a claim, they'll have no problem articulating it, and if not, they need to leave me the hell alone. Never make statement. If you must make a statement, make it a non-rebuttable statement. If you don't.
Okay, so there are times where you should and should not talk to the police. Generally, the blanket statement that most lawyers and attorneys will tell you is, don't talk to the police. Okay, cool. However, there are times where it does make sense to talk to the police, and look, I don't care anymore. I no longer enforce law, so it doesn't matter to me if you want to do this or not. But I will tell you for sure, as a friend, there are times where an activity you are conducting appears to be unlawful. And unless there is reason to believe that it is lawful, you can get arrested for it. Now, you're probably not going to get convicted if you had a good reason for doing whatever you're doing. Let me give you an example. So let's say I go to a domestic violence call, and I see a man and woman fighting, husband and wife, and there's some broken dishes on the floor, and the wife has a black eye, okay? And I say, what happened here? And both of them are like, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a police officer. I've been told never to talk to the police. I'm going to arrest the husband based on the evidence that it appears that they have been in a fight and he has struck her and thrown dishes. Potentially. I mean, this is a much simplified. There'd be a lot more to it than that, but this is, let's say, very simplified. Now, if he had just told me what really happened, which in this imaginary scenario is that some soap got on the floor, the wife had slipped on it and fallen, hit her hand against her eye, and broken a dish. And then they were arguing about how the soap got on the floor. Well, that's not domestic violence. However, if they're not going to explain that to me, I'm going to be arresting that husband on suspicion of domestic violence. That sort of thing. So there are times where, yes, it makes sense to give an explanation of what you're doing. You're not going to get convicted necessarily if that information comes out and you explain, well, this is what actually happened. However, it's going to save you some time waiting to go in front of an investigator who's going to get your side of the story, or even a court. So there are times where it makes sense. So the blanket statement, never talk to the police, isn't as good advice as he seems to think. I do follow Generation Nation. Was it Beowulf? Yeah, it's good. It's a good time. Yeah, the DHS memo, that is a conversation for another day. So, let's keep going.
Don't know what that is? Please check out my short free ebook that will explain it beautifully. You can get it at shop.freedomfromgovernment.org. The other strategy you can use is when the agent asks for license, insurance, registration, ask if he plans on using any of those against you in court. And it doesn't...
All right, so what he's doing right now is saying, if you're being asked to provide information about yourself, you can refuse to do so because you are protected against incriminating yourself. The Supreme Court has ruled that providing identification when a police officer has the lawful authority to request it, meaning that, let's say at the side of a road, if you've been stopped for a traffic infraction, that is not going to be considered incriminating information. Same with your registration, same with your proof of insurance, right? You can't use the Fifth Amendment to protect yourself from providing that information when lawfully required to. That's not how that works. He seems to think that the right to be free from self-incrimination protects you from providing it. It does not. All right, so if you guys want those, the actual court cases on that, once this is done, or right now, leave a comment, ask for, I will be happy to provide it. I will not be, providing it right now because I don't have that prepared. Again, today's live stream was not supposed to be about sovereign citizens. It was supposed to be a debate. That is not happening, so I don't have all of this stuff in front of me, but I would be more than happy to find it. Hibble, yes.
Doesn't
That
even
is-
matter what his answer to that question is, because you tell him that in order for him to get anything from you, he's going to have to perform a warrantless search and seizure to get it, because you're not going to give him anything or testify
highball.
against yourself. Then if he takes anything from you, you can have any of that evidence excluded using the court's own exclusionary rule. If you're still not getting anywhere, ask for a supervisor and then shut the hell up.
They are not required to provide a supervisor, folks. There are times when it makes sense to ask for a supervisor. For example, if I had never dealt with a sovereign citizen before, and they were giving me all this nonsense, I would request a supervisor, because I would be very confused as to what they were trying to say. I as if I remember off the top of my head, Merb. So you can ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. They are not required to provide it. So,
Up except to repeat
Common
the same
misconception.
thing to the supervisor. Important notes to remember. To detain is to arrest. Look it up in Black's Law.
Nope. Detain is different from arrest. If they were the same thing, why would they have two different things? Why would you need both words? They are not the same thing. Absolutely not. Detain happens based on reasonable suspicion. Arrest happens based on probable cause. Arrest is much it's a greater seizure than detain would, if that makes sense. It really doesn't. Detain and arrest are two completely different things. And as I stated before, he's using Black's Law Dictionary. No. Just no. Yes, detain. You're right, I'm A. It doesn't... It's absurd. And if you look into this, you start watching these YouTube videos that these sovereign citizens are putting out, like, they'll go real in depth about this nonsense. And, if you fact check it, you'll find that almost none of it is correct. And certainly the stuff that is correct is not contextually applicable. The reason that we're watching this one is because it's only 10 minutes. So he sort of assumes that you know the rest of it, and it's like an overview.
And right here. Every stop is a custodial arrest.
It's a detention.
To detain is to arrest. Look it up in Black's Law. In fact, here you go. Read and learn. Detain. To retain as the possession of personality. To arrest. To check. To delay. To hinder. To hold. Or to keep in custody. To
remember, this definition comes from 1910 and is a little out of date.
retard.
Assuming that's even the definition. You know what? We can check that. We can check that definition right now. Black's Law Dictionary. Let me just throw that up there. So the lawdictionary.org is the second. It's the online publication of the second edition from 1910. Oh, get out of here. And let's look up the definition that it has for arrest and see if it is what he's saying. Ba-ba-ba. Okay, so it's not. Maybe he's using a more recent version. I don't know. To keep a person in lawful custody, a warrant, crime, or statute can authorize this. Huh. Oh, that's so weird. It's not what he said at all. So maybe he's not using the second edition. But let's look up detain. Detention. The act of keeping back or withholding, either accidentally or by design, a person or thing. Well, that's weird. Those are two different things, aren't they? To keep a person in lawful custody, or to keep back or withhold someone. What? Two different things. But again, I don't know which version he's using. I just assume that's the second edition because most of them use that. And that's not really fair to him because I'm making an assumption. But it's, yeah.
To restrain from proceeding.
But that's another thing. I mean, that's kind of on him, right? Because he's not telling us which version of Black's Law he's using, which sort of reduces the credibility of whatever he's saying because I can't fact check it very easily if he doesn't give me the exact definition. So, you know.
Stay, to stop. People versus Smith. State versus King. See confinement and custody. So there's no such thing as a detention or detainment. It's always an arrest.
Again, no. It's. I believe it's in the 12th. The most recent I've ever looked through is the 8th. I would buy it myself, but it's kind of expensive. But local library near me has the 8th edition. I can say for sure that some of these definitions that these sovereign citizens are misinterpreting have been changed to make them less easily misinterpreted. There are a lot of really good cases being put in the chat here, so if you guys do want to read through some of those cases, if you're into that sort of thing, feel free to check them out on your own, or if you want, go ahead, post a link. If you want me to look through them for you and try to find the relevant information within them, I would be more than happy to do that as well. I have them written. I have a lot of these written down in my own
them to articulate
thing.
Their probable cause.
Also, yes, Gary, Black's Law Dictionary isn't law. A lot of them think, oh, it's a source of law. I don't know if they think it's a source of law, but it wouldn't really make sense if it wasn't. And I'm glad you guys agree that there's a difference between detention and arrest.
It's an unlawful detention. By the way, it is not a crime to refuse to give the cops anything unless you have victimized someone.
It certainly can be a crime to refuse to give police things, regardless of whether or not there's a physically injured party, which I believe is what he's thinking in regards to a victim, based on the misinterpretation of corpus electi. So, yeah.
They're kings, not slaves. The Fourth Amendment originally enforced the notion that each man's home is his castle, and this is actually known as the Castle Doctrine. Secure from unreasonable...
The Castle Doctrine and the Fourth Amendment are I mean, sort of tied together, but two completely different things. The Castle Doctrine, let me show you guys what the Castle Doctrine is. Legal doctrine that designates a person's abode or any legally occupied space, such as a vehicle or home, as a place in which that person has protections and immunities, permitting one in certain circumstances to use force. So generally, when someone refers to the Castle Doctrine, it's in defense of one's own home. So it doesn't apply to every state. It does apply to some states, and it's worth checking to see if your state is a state that uses the Castle Doctrine. But usually it's for to defend oneself against an intruder free from legal prosecution for the consequences of the force used. So if someone's breaking into your home, and you shoot them, if your state is a state that uses the Castle Doctrine, you're probably not going to get convicted of, murder for it. So it's pretty useful, but it's definitely different than the Fourth Amendment. But, oh, yes, so Merb is bringing up the duty to retreat. So duty to retreat when in use of force is if someone's attacking you, this is more or less, and let's confirm this, because my version of this is going to be a lot more generic than what it really is. Duty to retreat is basically if someone's attacking you and you're supposed to sort of retreat away from them. Yeah, so in law, the duty to retreat or requirement of safe retreat is a legal requirement in some jurisdictions that a threatened person cannot harm another in self-defense when it is possible to instead retreat to a place of safety. So, for example, let's say I'm in a bar, and someone's being real aggressive, and they're threatening me. Well, I'm not allowed necessarily to assault them in defense of myself. If I'm just able to walk out of there. I mean, that's not necessarily the best example. But, so you have a place where there's a duty to retreat before you can use force. There's a place where you can use the castle doctrine before you use force. Castle doctrine basically means that within your own home, there is not a duty to retreat away from an attacker. It gets a little complicated, but his comparison with the castle doctrine and the Fourth Amendment doesn't make sense. Rocker T, you're asking if police can pull you over in order to see if you have a driver's license absent reasonable suspicion of a crime. No, they can't pull you over simply because they think you don't have a driver's license unless they have reason to believe that you don't. So if let's say they ran your plate, which they can do. There's no expectation of privacy on a license plate. And it came back to a driver, which matched your description. And it said that driver, their license had expired. I mean, they might be able to pull you over for that, but they have to be able to, articulate exactly why they thought that you didn't have a license. It has to be reasonable. But generally, no. A license checkpoint is, in many circumstances, actually valid. But there are conditions. For example, the license checkpoint has to be published in a newspaper beforehand. So there are times where it is unconstitutional, times where it's not unconstitutional. It's a whole thing. So... But we're getting off topic here. And where was I saying? What was I saying? All right. We go back to this guy and the nonsense that he's spewing.
Searches and seizures of property by the government. It protects against arbitrary arrest and is the basis of the law regarding search warrants, stop and frisk, safety inspections, wiretaps, and other forms of surveillance, as well as being central to many other criminal law topics and to privacy law. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures.
Against unreasonable searches and seizures. He doesn't get to decide what is or is not reasonable. The courts get to decide what is or is not reasonable. It's not you're protected against every search and seizure, just the unreasonable ones. This is incredibly important, people, and not just with the sovereign citizen ideology, but in your own personal lives. The courts get to decide, for the most part, what is or is not reasonable or unreasonable. So, things to think about.
Shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. If they say you fit the description of someone who they are looking for, make them produce the report number and prove it.
They don't actually have to provide a report number and prove it. Now, if it determines, if you take them to court over this, if you file a complaint, and it turns out there was no report and there was nothing that would indicate that you do match the description, that's obviously an issue. So, feel free to try to check them on that. But if you match the description of a criminal and they can reasonably articulate why they think that you match the description, they can detain you. They can't necessarily arrest you, but they can certainly detain you.
If you don't already have one or three, get a dash cam. Cameras help you create a record. Tell them
dash cams are good. Get a dash cam. I am a huge fan of dash cams. You definitely want those. That's not bad advice, but that dash cam probably isn't going to support your sovereign citizen arguments. It's just going to show, the police were probably correct. Now, let's not assume that police are doing everything correctly, but everything he's arguing is basically just a little bonkers.
them that the video is streaming live to YouTube, and if you're not streaming, they're likely too dumb to know better, so just tell them that anyway.
They're streaming it to YouTube and not streaming it to YouTube makes very little difference unless they are seizing your SD card or your video recording device, which is probably a pretty big problem because under only extremely few circumstances would there be a good reason to seize that device, unless it's to submit some of the video into evidence, at which point it's evidence. So it's not like they're just getting rid of it. And if they do delete it, well, you're probably going to get some money out of it in a lawsuit. So it's...
411 so that you can call for real help from people that are around you. It also has a live video streaming feature if you have Signal at Safe AR.
If you're lawfully detained and you call someone to rescue you from that lawful detention, you're going to get yourself in an incredible amount of trouble. And whoever gets involved to try to rescue you from a lawful detention is also going to get in trouble. Resisting arrest, obstruction, you're going to get bad move. Now, if an officer is absolutely violating your rights, if they're assaulting you and there's no good reason, there are exceptions to this advice. But for the most part, no, I absolutely recommend against calling for help if you don't know what you're doing or what you're talking about. Now, there are circumstances where yes, I'm not going to debate that there aren't circumstances where you might need help, but this guy does not know what he's talking about. So what he needs help from, or in the circumstance where he would think that he needs help, he doesn't, most likely. Sorry, I'm sort of rambling here because I'm just trying to be like, what? None of this, what he's saying, makes sense.
RX.com. Be prepared because corporate policy men have little to no knowledge of de jure law or law enforcement.
I like that he thinks that he has more knowledge than the police. Why? I mean, yeah, sure, police don't get, trained in everything when it comes to law, but they receive training. And we know that his information is definitely not super good. So, they say this like, oh, well, police don't know what they're doing. Why wouldn't police know what they're doing? And there are circumstances, sure, where police don't know what they're doing, but why would they know less than this guy? Just questions to ask.
And they do not understand the unalienable and imprescriptible rights of the American people in the 50 states either. Most
they probably
idea
do.
What their own state and federal constitutions say, nor
Yes,
do
they do.
understand what actual laws they are supposed to be enforcing in the first place.
Yes, they do.
Police officers in America are not doing their job, and they
Yes, they
probably
are.
never will. They seem to exhibit minimal knowledge of law and law enforcement.
He thinks that they exhibit minimal knowledge of law and law enforcement because he is wrong about law and law enforcement. He has no idea what he's talking about. And because it differs from what he thinks, it must be wrong. That's a dangerous way to think, folks. And I want you, with this information I'm putting out, I don't want this to be the end of your search for knowledge. I don't want to be, and I say this a lot, use me as a springboard to find out more. I have been wrong in the past. I'm not saying what I'm saying is correct, but it should give you an idea of where to look, okay? So don't think that because I say it, I am correct. Because I was law enforcement, I am correct. But, I'm sorry, why do I keep... I have another screen there. I have a couple screens. That's why I keep looking around. But if you're getting contradicting information about law, you should do your own fact-checking. Sovereign citizens are not known for fact-checking their own information. So before you start taking me as gospel necessarily, fact-check it. Confirm that I'm right. Fact-check what he's saying. Confirm that he's wrong. Or maybe I'm wrong and he's right, and I'm just, pulling the wool over your eyes because I'm paid by the government to try to promote pro-government propaganda, which is not the case, by the way. But some people think that is the purpose of this channel. So, no, this Bearded Dude does have a YouTube channel. If you want to check out his other videos, Partially Woke, right here. He's not super huge within the sovereign citizen movement. Only 617 subscribers, but that's 617 people that are getting misinformation. So it's not like that's a small number by any means. And he has, there are people like, yeah, oh, you're totally giving out good information, which is the problem. So I'm not telling you to go and harass this dude. Please don't go harass this dude. I say to, give myself a legal defense in case he's like, you're sicking people on me. That's not my intent. If you want to check what he's saying and confirm that it doesn't quite make sense, please feel free to do so.
tyrants, and just an extension of political aims for ill-gotten gains, theft within the special maritime jurisdiction, piracy, and extortion. Police are corporate revenue collection officers who are paramilitary trained to kill and take your unelite.
All right, we are kind of trained to kill. We're not trained to be killers. We are trained to use potentially lethal devices to protect people. We don't just kill because someone's broken the law. You basically, if you're going to use lethal force, it has to be because that person is a danger to the public or the officer. Like, there are very specific circumstances in which you can use lethal force. We're not going to go into that. But this, like, corporate, what was he saying? Corporate revenue.
Officers who are jurisdiction, piracy, and extortion. Police are corporate revenue collection officers.
Yeah, corporate revenue collection officers is just fancy words for a bunch of nonsense.
Officers who are paramilitary trained to kill.
Paramilitary. I mean, I am military, so I can't really argue against that in my circumstance, but it doesn't really quite make sense.
Your unalienable right to do something away from you.
Is he unalienable?
Or paramilitary trained to kill and take your unalienable right.
Inalienable? Is that?
To do something
we're not gonna.
Away from you. The American Gestapo are protected by the Foreign Bar Attorneys as
American Gestapo.
There's the corporate commercial court systems. These so-called.
Again, he thinks that it's all a corporate system, which is bonkers. Oh, the maritime. Guys, I have a video that I'm editing right now about the whole maritime jurisdiction, road pirates. Yeah. So if you want to learn more about sovereign citizens, you don't have to subscribe. I'm not asking you to subscribe, but I do have videos already out about it, and I am making more. So if you come back to my channel, I mean, I feel like blue bacon's a pretty easily rememberable thing. So I'm not asking you to subscribe. I definitely appreciate it if you do. But I will be putting out more information if this is a topic you want to learn more about. So, yeah, Ruby Ridge. Oh, my God. One of these days I'm going to do a live stream about the Ruby Ridge situation.
The courts are operating in bankruptcy, and the police are an extension of those private tribunals.
Courts are operating in bankruptcy. That's... What? I don't understand.
To enforce the bankruptcy and collect money against what are deemed corporate U.S. citizens. You are tried.
That's the argument that the United States, the corporation, and that citizens are basically shell accounts to store money in. That is based off the argument the United States went bankrupt in the 30s, and certain acts were created. House Joint Resolution 13... It's something. It's a House Joint Resolution that supposedly says that United States citizens are collateral against the United States debt. If you actually read the resolution, it says nothing about that. It's nothing to do with that. Again, they don't fact check their information. So that's, I mean, that would take an hour to go into the complexities of and why it's nonsense.
A corporation. Think about this. There is not any legitimate job you can have where you act in the capacity as a domestic terrorist with the corp.
Police aren't domestic terrorists. I mean, maybe there are individual police officers who are, but the police as an organization, that's not domestic terrorism. But speaking of, if you want to learn more about this, I actually do have where is it? I have a Tumblr where I post essays. So if you like to read, if you don't have the time to actually watch a video, if you want to read, oh man, do I have essays. I write these. And these are based off of the scripts for my videos. So they're going to be very similar to the videos themselves. So if you want to get some good essays you're reading on with those, let me post this to the chat there. Kablamo. So if you do want more information before the videos are made, or you don't want to watch the videos that have been made, please feel free to check that out.
Should get away with it. Police officers are domestic and do not possess lawful venue and jurisdiction. The American people...
Yes, they do possess lawful jurisdiction.
A police officer is not doing his or her...
For some reason, citizens are non-domestic. I'd like to hear more about that argument.
Job when they initiate threat, duress, and coercion at automobile stops and take people's rights away. If they don't waive them during a corporate administrative proceeding on the side of the road, a cop is not doing his or her job when they step on state and federal constitutions and commit high treason against the Constitution for these...
Correctly enforcing state and federal law. It's not high treason against the Constitution, by the way.
United States of America. A police officer is not doing their job when they operate under state statutory color of law and make legal determinations contrary to the 43 Supreme Court decisions regarding the right to travel. Right of way.
There are no Supreme Court decisions that establish the right to travel without a driver's license. I'm sorry, the right to drive without a driver's license. I know, high treason, right? So the idea that, look, you have the right to travel. We're going to go into this because this is a good one. Before the Constitution was ratified fully, we had the Articles of Confederation, the precursor to the Constitution. It didn't really work out that great, so it was scrapped and the Constitution was put together instead. We still use the Constitution. It's worked out pretty well so far, in my personal opinion. Within the Articles of Confederation, you had the right to free ingress and regress between states, because at the time, states were fairly independent from each other. The idea of a federal overarching government was, people weren't super happy about it because they had just gotten rid of a federal government. So like, well, we want to be pretty independent. So the federal government basically was like, look, guys, you have a lot of freedom. Cool, but you'll be able to travel between, across state lines, and you won't be limited by that. Like, you won't have to go through like border checks and stuff like that. Now, it turns out that not having a strong federal government had a lot of issues, which is one of the reasons the Constitution replaced the Articles of Confederation, because the Constitution actually introduced a stronger federal government. But there's this idea that you have the right to travel, and you do have the right to travel, but that comes from case law. And it's basically part of the privileges and immunities. Privileges and immunities clause of the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution does it actually say that you have the right to travel, but in case law in the early 1800s, I believe, the Supreme Court basically said your right to travel. Oh, you're right, Gary. Sorry, your right to travel is established by the Supreme Court as part of the privileges and immunities. Now, the Supreme Court has also said if a state wants to enforce laws that require you to be licensed to travel on public roads, that is absolutely okay. That doesn't violate your constitutional rights. So if he's going to argue that that case law that establishes that you can be required to have a driver's license if a state requires it, which all states do, is unconstitutional, or that the Supreme Court is a kangaroo court and therefore the rulings from it are false, well, then you have to also establish why the ruling that you have the right to travel isn't false. And it's this whole argument, you do not have the right to drive on a public roadway without a driver's license. Rant over, moving on. That's a much longer conversation, but just throwing it out there.
Right of free passage. Police officers will take away your right to travel on the postal rural routes of passage in a private automobile for non-commercial purposes. So you have to know your...
The whole commercial thing comes from a misinterpretation of Black's Law Dictionary, and I do want to cover that because that's a kind of a big deal. That's huge within the sovereign citizen movement. Blacks. Let me go to spelling. So this is where it comes from. That entire argument comes from definition of driver. And I have a video on this. What is a driver? Now again, this is from 1910. One employed, that's important, in conducting a coach, carriage, wagon, or other vehicle with horses, mules, or other animals, or a bicycle, tricycle, or motor car, though not a street railroad car. The reason they think it has to be commercial is because it's the word employed. Now, what they don't realize, or are intentionally ignoring, is that the word employed can have a couple meanings. It can mean to give work to, or be paid for, or it can mean to make use of. So, if we assume, because this is how it is enforced, that employed means to make use of, so it would be to make use of or conduct a coach, carriage, wagon. And of course, this isn't a perfect translation of what it means because this wasn't written to be, people, they expected you to know what employed meant. Now, the current Black's Law definition, and feel free to check this yourself, go to a local library and find it. I think in my video, I put it up there. I have a screenshot on my phone. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to share it with you guys. But I can confirm, if you go and look up anything past the 7th edition of Black's Law Dictionary, I don't know when it changed. I do know that I've seen in the 7th edition and the 8th edition, If you look up driver, it does not have the word employed. It's just one who, you know, conducts a vehicle. It is semantics. It's absolutely semantics. This is, and the fact that this has never been, to my knowledge, enforced in a way that means that it has to be commercial activity should give you a pretty good idea of who is right and who is wrong. The guy who's, choosing an incorrect definition of employed, contextually, or every single case that establishes that that's not how it's used. Now, if you want some case law on this, I can give you case after case after case, and I would be more than happy to do so if you currently employed watching this live stream. You can ask for it, and I'd be more than happy to just give you case after case for you to read yourself. But I'm not going to do that right now.
Police will violate our right to locomotion, to travel freely, safely, and unencumbered for such non-commercial purposes as ordinary travel, recreation, or pleasure on any given day. Police are not doing their job when they rip off your car or make criminal conversions and fraudulent conveyances or towing an impound of private property over to financial...
Police can absolutely tow and or impound private property under certain conditions. Or they can have it towed and impounded.
Benefit of third parties without our consent. Cops break the law when they force you and intimidate you into surrendering your persons, houses, papers, and effects.
Not necessarily.
Military-trained Gestapo-style tactics to force you to bear false witness.
Can you guys have you guys figured out his biases yet? Let me give you a hint.
And implement paramilitary-trained Gestapo-style tactics to
Weird.
Force you to bear false witness against yourself. Cops are not doing their job when they are in contempt of the current Chapter 11 reorganization bankruptcy of the United States, violate public policy, and try to steal your...
Has any sovereign citizen ever won court? I'm sure they have, based on technicalities, not based on the content of their arguments, to my knowledge. And I've read many cases where, no. In fact, there's this Canadian case. So freemen on the land is another variation of sovereign citizens. Basically, instead of using the Constitution, they use the Magna Carta, I believe. So Canada, England, Ireland, Scotland, places that have been under British rule in the past and still their legal systems are based sort of on the Magna Carta. They'll use slightly different arguments, although they're almost identical. And so Canada, there's this judge who dealt with a sovereign citizen and wrote this 100-page essay on why everything that was being said was wrong. Now that's based on Canadian law, so it doesn't translate exactly, but it's amazing to read. If you guys ask for it if you leave a comment, I'll see if I can find it for you.
Your labor. Police are not doing their job when they force you into commerce, force you to contract with them against your will, write a security, which is a commercial traffic ticket, absent a public hazard or surety bond, which is a violation of
now he's just making stuff up.
1933 and 1934 Securities and Exchange Commission, while acting
making
in
stuff
the
up.
public. A police officer is not doing their job when they cite a fictional state statute, practice law without a license, and act in the capacity of prosecutor, executioner, judge, and jury over the lives of innocent men and women within the 50 states.
Still
Police
making
are not
stuff
doing
up.
their job when they waste taxpayer dollars protecting state and municipal property and the financial assets of state corporations and their crooked politicians. Since when does a police officer within the several states or the union of 50 states ever do their job as it was originally intended?
Pretty sure all the time, or else there would be some pretty significant issues between the government and the citizens. Just a thought.
And for the protection of the rights of men and women. As most Americans will agree, the police...
Is this guy's Timothy McVeigh's dad? Yeah, might as well be. For those of you who don't know, let me see if I can find actually a picture of Timothy McVeigh. Tim McVeigh. I mean, you put a beer on him, you give him 50 pounds. So the Oklahoma City bombing, for those of you who are not intimately aware with who Timothy McVeigh is, this is him. He helped orchestrate the worst domestic terrorist attack within the United States, bombed Oklahoma City Federal Building. He wasn't necessarily a sovereign citizen himself, but he definitely was reading sovereign citizen propaganda around that time. So, well done him. Good times. Yeah. It's traffic. Yeah, no, and I want to apologize to you guys because this was not the original plan for this live stream. So I am not as prepared as I could be to like make this super educational and interesting. But I did think it was, it would be fun to sort of introduce some of you who weren't familiar with what sovereign citizens are to, a short little video of this guy making some of the claims. And we're not going in depth into all the really significant, crazy conspiracy theories, but this is a pretty standard sort of, if you want to know what sovereign citizens are like, this guy could be the poster child for them. I appreciate it. Yeah, once we start getting into debates, so my plumber, I told you guys last live stream, my plumber is a sovereign citizen. He's basically this guy, but he's real articulate. Like, he makes it sound really, really good, really, really convincing. And I really want to get him in a debate. So we're working on that. I'd like to certainly debate sovereign citizens live, and if you guys know any yourself, send them my way. We'll have some conversations. Where was I? Boom.
Not work for the people anymore. They are predatory, dishonest liars, and are quite possibly more dangerous to our liberties as a free people.
Guys, I'm a dangerous and dishonest liar.
Dishonest liars and are quite
predatory and dishonest
more dangerous
liar.
to our liberties as a free people than standing armies. Well, I guess that concludes.
Keeping people from murdering each other is more dangerous to someone's liberty than a standing army, folks. You heard it here first.
Dangerous to our liberties as a free people than standing armies. Well, I guess that concludes today's rant, but for more valuable tools...
Rant is an appropriate term, but to be fair, that's kind of what I do too, so...
If you want to exercise your right to travel unencumbered freely, like your creator intended, go ahead.
All right, so like your creator intended. So I'm going to be ending this live stream soon, and we've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I think the last argument we should make. Thank you, IMA. Please, promote me. No. So he's like the creator. A lot of the argument boils down to, once you talk to a sovereign citizen and you sort of remove all of their arguments and you say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, the Constitution doesn't work this way, this is not how law is enforced like this, the Supreme Court has never ruled that, almost always the argument will boil down to, well, man doesn't have authority over man, only God has authority over man. And so we can assume when they say God, they mean the Christian God, because the entire movement started in a Christian church, the Church of Jesus Christ Christian. So this idea that man doesn't have authority over man. I don't know if you guys have ever read the Bible. I've poked through it once or twice. Romans 13. Let me read a thing to you. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. So on and so forth it goes on. Until this point, this is also why you pay taxes. For the authorities are God's servants, who give their full time to governing. Folks, this entire movement was started to avoid paying taxes, more or less. And if they're going to use religion to explain why they don't have to obey the government, well, according to the Bible, you're supposed to obey the government. So, once again, not fact-checking their sources. So, weird. Anyway, do you guys have any questions before I let you all go? Finish your, what day is today? Today is a Tuesday before you finish your Tuesday evening. Questions, comments, concerns, feelings of inadequacy. Yeah, I'll check my email. Thank you for letting me know, because sometimes it disappears. All right, well, if you guys think of any questions that you're not putting here, and if you want me to Well, I'll talk about that, Redeem. If you want more information on cases, if you want me to review any cases, um, if you want any more information, please leave a comment on this video. I'll be more than happy to get back to you and give you some stuff to read through. I've never tased anyone, actually. I have always Hendrick versus v Maryland. I'll put something down in the comment section about Hendrick v Maryland. I've never tased anyone. I've always prided myself in my ability to de-escalate a situation. I've drawn my taser on someone once, and I came very, very close, but we were able to bring it back down, fortunately. No, I've never tased a sovereign citizen. I've never actually interacted with a sovereign citizen in a law enforcement capacity, and that, I think, partially comes from the fact that I only really enforce law on a military installation, so they tended to avoid us like the plague. But no, I've never done it. Unfortunately, I always wanted to though. But anyway, thank you guys so much for showing up, sticking around, asking questions, keeping this interesting. Sorry that it was the beginning. It was certainly I was going back and forth between Rocker and the subject matter of this live stream, but you know it was supposed to be me and Rocker today, so I figured. No, it's funny the idea of tasing. I definitely wish I had been able to interact with them. Yeah, I'm just rambling as you guys filter out. So, yeah, no, leave some comments, ask me some questions, all that good stuff. And until the next time, be good and stay safe.